is Eric Cutler. Eric is in
Hello.
Europe. Hi, so great to see you after
It's
quite a few years.
been
Where are you,
almost 5 days. I'm in Madrid. I just got here today.
what are you doing in Madrid?
I do my first Rusalka. I was supposed to do it in Santa Fe this summer, but obviously we all know what happened there.
Right. Have you worked since March when COVID started to stop everything?
Believe it or not, I flew home exactly 6 months to the day from Vienna. I was at Theater de Wien working on Fidelio with Christoph Waltz and Manfred Honeck. And we ended up doing 0 performances, but we did do a live stream, which I think was important. I think it gave people a lot of hope at that point. And it was just nice to see opera, at home.
So the last time we worked together was in Santa Fe, actually. I think it was
in Chicago. I did those last.
You did a Romeo with me.
I did my last Romeos with you.
Yeah, we did. You were my Romeo that I was conducting, and correct. And before that, we did a stunning Romeo at the Lyric, and before that, we did a wonderful production of Pearl Fishers in Santa Fe from Lee Blake Louis. It was a beautiful production, and you sung absolutely stunningly a very, very difficult role. And since then, your voice has evolved quite a lot, from what I gather. But let's start with, how did you become a singer? What was your first acquaintance with music and with singing?
Well, the first time I ever heard a tenor or any opera of any sort, we had this exchange student who came from Mexico. His name was Pablo Testolini. So if you're listening, hi, Pablo. And he came and stayed for a year in Adel, Iowa, where I grew up. It was, foreign exchange student program. I was a sophomore at that point. And I think his father was a amateur tenor. I mean, maybe he sang in church, but he had all these old recordings of Geely and Björling, and the first time I heard, I think it probably was Luciano Pavarotti singing Tosca, and I looked at him and I said, "Who is that? What is that?" And
how old were you?
I was 15, I think, at that point.
Right.
And then that it sort of progressed that year, my sophomore year. I was singing in choir, and I was in jazz band. I was a drummer, and I had my own band, my own rock band. But I was always sort of singing these arias or imitating that in the basement on my own. And, over the course of the next 2 or 3 years in high school, I would go to the public library in Des Moines, and I would, check out all these CDs from these tenors, and I started to read some biographies, and that's really sort of how it happened.
What was your parents', let's say, roughly, if you can say, cultural background? Did they like classical music, or it was not at all in their universe?
Not even close. We were, I would say, lower middle class in rural Iowa, so no, that wasn't really on their radar.
So what did they think of their son when he started listening to Corelli and Pavarotti?
I think they were fascinated by it. I think they thought it was. I think they encouraged me because they saw that it was authentic. They could tell that it was something that I was really interested in. And they've always been incredibly supportive. And just a side note, my sister then started to listen to opera, and she had this incredible spinto soprano instrument. And she actually went to Simpson College and studied with the same teacher that Johnny Osborne studied with, Ann Larson, who is now passed away. But my sister then got into singing opera as well. And, she decided, in her junior year that this just wasn't the direction I think she wanted to go. Because it takes a lot more than just having a great instrument.
Okay, so you're 15, you are going to the library, you are not hiding from your parents, but how does that become a profession? I mean, there is a lot of steps in between. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I was, I think like most singers that have, develop a successful career. Some of it was really hard work, almost an obsession, but a lot of it was luck. And I was lucky to have great teachers from the very beginning. My high school choir teacher, Mike Cooper, was just a tremendous support for me at that time. He was giving me the right things to sing so that I could audition for colleges coming up. And then, when I ended up I transferred to Luther College. I started at University of Northern Iowa, and I studied with a coach, Miguel Pinto was his name, who was Alfredo Kraus's coach. And then I ended up in the hands of Ed Anderek at Luther College. And Ed was the one that really, he's still part of my team today. I still call him. He's an unbelievable resource. He knows more recordings than anyone except for my manager, probably at this point.
Yeah. I don't agree. Yes. Yes. Just push the button. Yeah.
Incredible. He's like an encyclopedia.
Right.
But I think at each step, every 2 or 3 years, I got into the right hands until I was about 23. So
who told you, Eric, I think this could be a profession for you? You could make a living out of this.
Yeah, but Miguel Pinto at the University of Northern Iowa said, you have every single thing you need to do this, and make a living doing it. And I was 18 at that point when he was telling me that.
Did you hesitate? Did you think, oh great, that's exactly what I want to do?
Yeah. You
knew right away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then you went into the Lindemann Young Artist Program at the Met.
Yeah, my junior year of Luther College, Ed had me working on about 5 or 6 arias, and we entered the Met auditions in 1998 just to get experience. I'd never seen an opera at that point. That wasn't on VHS. That's how old I am. We watched VHS recordings.
You're just telling your age by doing this.
Yeah. So we entered that, and then I ended up being one of the 10 winners. That's how they used to do it back then. They just picked 10 winners, and you were on the concert. Right. And and I was 22 at the time, and I still had to finish my senior year of college at that point. So they told me to come back after I graduated in '99, and I entered the program then.
And in the program, so the Lindemann Young Artist Program is a very prestigious program. You are coached, you have the opportunity to see, and it's probably one of the most valuable things, amazing performances all year around. And you are in New York, you see a lot of things, and you get some singing opportunities on stage. What did you get?
Yeah, Levine just kind of, I'll never forget my debut, which was 20 years ago in Fidelio, with Hepner and Matila, who I'm singing with here in Rusalka. I can't wait to see her. And, he threw me up in a lot of these comprimario roles, and in the big German repertoire, just so that I could get on stage and just kind of sing. And I remember walking down, I was the Erste Gefangene, and I walked down and I'm just staring at Levine, and he stops rehearsal. He's like, Eric, babe, there's a monitor on the left and there's a monitor on the right. You don't have to just look at me the whole time. And I looked, oh, okay. And that was basically my, it was sink or swim.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just kind of got up there, and I was with these guys like, Falk Struckmann. It was ignorance is bliss, right? Because I didn't know who any of these people were. If I had known, I don't think I would have made it through.
And so then you have to start a career. So what was the first gig? Because it's very, very hard. Those programs, you think that's it. And no, that's not it. That's the beginning of the career.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the problem now is just launching the career after that, or you do 2 or 3 of those types of programs, or, but, I was lucky. I mean, at that time, I could sing. I mean, people didn't know what to do with me, really. I had high C sharps. I could sing Mozart. I could sing Bellini. I could sing, Monteverdi. And so I just focused, on singing. I sang all the Mozart roles. I got hired right away. Stephen Lord gave me my first job at St. Louis the summer of, when was it, 2002. And Patrick Summers gave me, actually, I think Patrick gave me my first job singing Entführung aus dem Sarai in Houston with Elizabeth Futrell, which was such a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sort of just went. And then came La Juive in 2003, which I sang at the Met. And after that, things really, just took off.
Right. So you say people didn't know what to do with your voice, and what strikes me when we talk together just now, you have a very high pitched, natural speaking voice.
Yeah.
You have a tenor voice, definitely.
Yeah, I'm a tenor. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a tenor, and it is that beautiful resonance up there, and it's your voice. I mean, it's not built or anything like that. But you are now singing more dramatic roles than ever. You were singing Mozart. I remember what impressed me tremendously in the Pearl Fisher we did. It was your ability to go into really typical French Wamisque,
Yeah.
demi-teinte, sfumature, sings very light but very natural to you. It's just like I didn't feel, the audience didn't feel cheated on this. There was still like, the voice was really in place, and then you could get the voice larger and larger. So now you have turned into more than jugendliche Dramatische in a way, or how would you characterize your voice today?
Yeah, I'd say that I'm just a real typical Jugendlich Heldentenor. I think of right in that, the Germans earlier sort of, they had these sort of yeah, well, it's not, yeah, I guess, but they had a category of tenor. They would call it an Echt Tenor or Schwer Tenor. Obviously, the heavy tenor, the Schwer Tenor, was singing Tristans, these things. And, I'm a classical Echt Tenor that sings,
a real tenor, an honest tenor.
The roles that require lyricism.
Right.
And,
to just on rather high pitch, but not so high pitch energy and diction. So that requires a certain quality of voice, or certain flexibility of the instrument, correct?
Yeah, I'd say so. And I think I've been having a huge success singing all the Strauss tenor roles that Botha did earlier.
So let's just sit on this a little, or talk about this a little. So what are those roles? Is it are you going to the Emperor in the Frauner Schatten?
I've already sung it, yeah, and I have it coming up in Berlin. Yeah.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah.
And the other tenor role in the Frauner Schatten, what's his name? There's this Jugendliche something.
The Jüngling, yeah.
Yeah. Have you done that too?
No, I never did. I'd never sung
that. You went directly to the Emperor.
Yeah, I'd sung Scaramuccio with Levine in 2003 at the Met, and then 2 summers ago I sang Bacchus in X.
Oh, you did Bacchus. Okay. Yeah. Have you ever done the Italian tenor?
Yeah, I sang that in the Met twice, I believe.
Wow. So your whole career is going to could be a Strauss career, and in a few years you can do Erod or Egist or that kind of thing.
Oh, that's the end. That's when you.
That's when that's when you still want to make money, and you are a great artist.
That's the very end, in my opinion, for me.
Well, yeah. Could you still sing Mozart?
Yeah, I mean. Yeah. My wife was coaching Don Anna, and I was there with her. I coached something else before it, and I just started to sing the first act duet with her as Ottavio. And, that's the goal. You're still, I mean, it doesn't feel great. It doesn't feel like it used to. There's no doubt.
Right.
But the thing is I didn't clearly make the decision, oh, I'm going to be a Helden tenor now.
Right.
It's just that about 2010, mid-30s, it just wasn't the same. I had 3 different voices, and I had to decide what I was going to do about that. I mean, the thing is, it would be crazy to think, I'm 6'4", I'm 1.94 meters,
Right.
and I'm 220 pounds. It wouldn't make sense that my voice was going to stay the way it was,
Yeah.
And what was interesting is that when I finally did start to sing this repertoire, I walk in a room with other Wagnerians and people that were singing more heroic repertoire, and I felt like, okay, these are my people. They're
Right.
big. And what we do is, I think of it as sport. And,
Right.
you have the rare circumstance where you have a basketball player that's 5'8", and he's a great, you have a Spud Webb player. But most of the time, professional baseball player is 6'4", 109, maybe 6'6". They have a certain body type. And I think what is interesting about my trajectory is that unknowingly, I did all of the things that I needed to do to get to this point in my life, technically, where I'm able to sing that repertoire without really ever hurting myself. Because I was singing all of the big French roles, a lot of bel canto repertoire. And so what I did was I built what the Germans call Ausdauer, or why can't I think of the word? Just stamina.
Stamina, or long-term stamina. Yeah.
Hoffmann teaches you stamina. Le Huguenot teaches you stamina. Moïse et Pharaon teaches you how to sing all night. Mm-hmm. And if you want to sing a lot of these big German operas, that's what you need to be able to do.
Right. But if it's natural to the voice, you don't fight the voice, then the voice doesn't get tired. And through the years, your voice gets stronger. And what is stunning to me is that your voice in that heavier repertoire is still healthy and still sound young, whereas you would have pushed that earlier. You would have gone there earlier just because I have the physique and maybe I can, then your voice would not have resisted it. So more power for you. You are singing now much more in Europe than in the US. What's the reason for that? It's a direct question, and you know what? My PR person it taught me something wonderful. It's not an interview; it's a conversation. But you don't have to always answer the questions. That means when a journalist, I'm not a journalist. I'm your friend, and we're having a conversation. Ask you a question. If a journalist asks you a question, you are not obliged to answer. You are not at the police, so. You can always say, well, I'd rather not talk about this. Or if you have a little of a politician in your DNA, you can go around. But I'm sure you have a good answer anyway.
Well, I think, look, a very long-winded answer to this is, the Met program for me was a bit of a blessing and a curse all in one. I was 27 years old when I was singing La Juive with Neil Shikoff and Furlanetto and Soile Zukoski. I was 27. I had no idea what I was doing. Even though it went well, trying to sing I Puritani at the Met when I was just barely 30, that's what the American market specifically remembers me as. And so for me, it was twofold. One, I needed to get away from that so that I could try to figure out where I was going technically, what type of singer I was. I never felt comfortable singing Italian bel canto music. It was like a coat that was 2 sizes too small or it just didn't fit right. And I think I needed to get experience on stage. And I think what happens to us as singers is if you start too soon and you don't know where you're going, you become labeled in a certain repertoire, and it's incredibly difficult to break out of that. Right. And for me, I think it was much easier for me to go over and create the type of artist that I wanted to be away from that, with all these preconceived notions of what type of singer and tenor that I was, from what people saw me doing when I was just not even 30.
Right. So this is a beautiful answer, and I will let you elaborate more on it. But I mean, for maybe the students that are listening to us, I think people have to remember that you do get labeled, that our industry has a tendency to offer a lot of opportunities to young artists, yeah, conductors too, yeah, just because that's a check in their box. Yeah. I have given an opportunity to a young artist, but then getting re-engaged and maybe re-engage, that's the extreme difficulty of this career.
It absolutely is.
People are very quick to put a label. Yeah. And we do that sometimes, you know, we have ideas on artists and we have an opinion on them that we have never heard just because that's the reputation they have. But there is another side to this, which is America loves comeback or loves to all of a sudden change categories. True. And I think you have an incredible future in American houses, and they will love you and they will love your story. When I do auditions, the first thing I do is turn upside down the bio and not look at the bio. Mm. I don't want to know what this person has done. I don't want to know if that person is singing regularly in the A houses or not. I want to have an opinion of what I hear, because our industry, unfortunately, has little imagination. People are copying, and they go on opera base and saying, who is singing the Imperator? And then because you have sang it in Frankfurt, then maybe you will singing in Munich and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Doesn't really matter how well it's done. I mean, I'm not exaggerating this. This is what is happening. But that also means that it can change very quickly.
That's correct.
That can change very quickly. Yeah. And what is true is that there are so many more houses in Europe of various sizes that you have more opportunities to go up and down in the ladder and try things.
Well, and you know, the biggest thing that we haven't touched on, frankly, is that there's a huge difference between singing at the Met in Chicago, in San Francisco, in Houston, than from singing in Stuttgart, Zurich, Brussels. I mean, the houses are 3 times larger. It's just another experience as a singer. And, you know, from all of my American friends and their, you know, colleagues that go back and forth, there is an intimacy in European houses that is undeniable.
Right.
You can't, and that's just is what it is.
Right.
You know? But
Eric, again, I have been in the wings, at least a big advocate of you as an artist. And I know you will, when you want and when the time fits, you know, I think you will have an incredible career in the US and at the highest level with role you want to sing. The difference between US and States too, mm-hmm. I mean, culturally, this is really very, very different. So how are you adapting? You live in Germany now with your wife. How do you feel there?
I mean, my son Henry is 11 in 2 days, actually.
Happy birthday.
I've been there for over 12 years. I speak German every day. My kids, you know, there are always moments or things that you just think, did I hear that right? I mean, there's obvious cultural differences, you know, and every expat will say this. But for me, you know, as an opera singer specifically, it's so central to their lives, to their weekly, daily lives. It's still, it's
Yeah.
their music, it's their art form. You know, as Americans, we have film. That's really like what we have contributed. And I think for me, being an opera singer and having two small kids, having a wife that's incredibly successful in her own career, having the option to go to Stuttgart, München, Hamburg, Dresden, and I'm 3-4 hours away. When I have 2 or 3 days, I can jump on the Deutsche Bahn and I'm home. So for me, there's also this convenience for me trying to be, you know, there's times where Yulia's working and I'm full-time dad. I'm home for 2 months and you know, and that I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, Yulia and I try to have things as equal as they can be with 2 full-time careers. And I think it took me a while to get fully integrated into German culture, as it just does. But
Right.
now I can't say that it's just home.
Right. And Germany, Spain, France, Belgium, Italy, these are also very different culture, as well as Louisiana and Alaska are very different.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
And as a European, as a French person, but having worked so much in the States and being, you know, 50-50 between the two continents, there are moments where myself in Europe, I say, did I really hear that too? You know, or where I do get tired of the French whining mentality or entitlement, and I miss the US. And without disrespect to the US, who has been so generous to me, there are moments where I miss Europe when I am in the US, and I could not, you know, be in only one of the two. I mean, this is the beauty of our careers, is that
It absolutely is. I thought that today flying. You know, getting to Madrid, a city. This is my 5th production at Teatro Real, and I know the city. I feel like I have a relationship with the city,
right.
And that's the real beauty of our lives.
Right. So one of the difference in our industry between Europe and the US, beside the size of the houses, which are in general way bigger in the US,
yeah,
which generates a certain type of singing, but also a certain type of stagings. And as we know, US is much more traditional in staging too, for cultural reasons. How do you feel with the dramatic demands of European theater? And what is the style you prefer? I mean, do you like avant-garde, provocative staging? Are you more on the traditional spectrum? Do you like to rehearse?
Yeah, I do. You know, look, there's an advantage to doing a Wiederaufnahme in a German house. You know, especially if you know the role. You know, I did my first Kaiser in Frauenschatten with Kent Nagano in Hamburg, and I only had 10 days rehearsal, and that was, you know, pretty gutsy. But I was prepared, and it wasn't a problem. It's not a long role, but you know, the first time you sing Hoffmann, the first time you sing, you know, a Lohengrin or these things, you need rehearsal. You need it. And in terms of the staging, you know, I've been, you know, the last 5 or 6 years, I've worked with Mahtaler, I've worked with Farlakovsky a lot. I've worked with this German Johannes Erath. There's been a number of these leading, you know, I don't know if you would call it Regie Theater, but, you know, the Beato and these guys that, you know, really just shock jock directors. And look, sometimes it works. And sometimes it really doesn't work. And I think for me, what's always important is if the director has an idea and he knows what he wants to say about the piece. And if he does, then we're going to be fine. I think for me, the Hoffmann I just did with Farlakovsky, you know, people either hated it or they thought it was absolute genius. And for me, I think what is the point of what we're doing if people come out thinking, oh, wasn't that nice? No, I want people to go home and think, what what did I just see? I wanted to stay with them in some way. And a guy like Varlikovsky, even though you feel like you're pulling teeth at times, the end product, it challenges the audience. And Mortier was the guy that really, back in 2006, 7, took me and started giving me chances to sing things. And I had access to a lot of the directors that he, championed. And so I'm sort of in that vein in my career in Europe, that a lot of these directors like to use me, because I feel like, honestly, if I've done the work at home, the technical work at home, and I have my game plan in terms of how I'm going to pace the role, and I've done that, then I think of it like golfing. If I'm on the range and I'm hitting balls and just practicing, I'm practicing. But when I'm playing a round of golf, I'm playing the game. And I feel like when I get a director like that and I'm singing, I stop worrying about all the technical problems and I just am in the role. And I think for me, I like being challenged that way.
So when you say you are in the role, I mean, let's take Hoffman, for instance. You have Au Dieu de quelle ivresse, which is really tough.
Well, that is the place.
And in the Choudin's version, I don't know which version you did lately, you do it again at the end of when you cannot sing anymore.
You're done.
Higher and higher. And at the same time, you need to be absolutely in love, ebriated, in total elation, and probably moving around. Does it happen? You say, okay, I'm so prepared, I can do almost anything. But sometimes you just probably say, wait, I cannot do this. I need to stay put for this.
Absolutely. And I think of that, as in terms of my game plan. This, the first 2 acts, these are the places where I'm going to have to stand and sing, or I'm going to have to find a position that I can sing in and focus technically, because it's just too hard otherwise. Mm-hmm. And that's typically a dialogue that you just have to have with the director.
So how do you do that? If you have a director that says, no, it's very important for my concept. I've been reading all these books on Hoffman and German Romanticism, and you have to be laying in bed with one arm, waving, doing this. How do you approach those situations?
I try to be as much of a diplomat as I can and have an open conversation about it. But usually, when it comes down to it towards the end, I'm just basically like, well, then you come do it.
Okay.
Please, I'd like to see it. It's after a while, you can only do as much as you can physically do. Right. And, there's always breaking points. I mean, whether it's with conductors or directors, there's always where.
So let's again remember what my PR person says. You don't have necessarily to answer, but what your breaking points, are they more with colleagues, stage directors, conductors? If a conductor, take Au Dieu de quelle ivresse at a Brucknerian tempo, you're going to die. Yeah. What you do, and is that more annoying than the director that asks you to sing this upside down backstage almost, or the soprano next to you that is just shaking you too much?
I can't even think of really ever having any problems with any colleagues. Really, I can't. Yeah. You work with colleagues that you enjoy more or less. You work with colleagues that really aren't able to be team players, and that they're out there for themselves. They need that. They need that adulation to survive. And but I can't say I've ever had that issue with colleagues. But conductors and directors, yes. I mean, very, very often. But you try to have a dialogue as long as you can. But at some point, there comes a line where you just say to yourself, I know that you have, Delmonico in your ear or this person in your ear, but this is how I can do it. Right. And I don't know what else. At the end of the day, what more can you do?
Well, and at your level, you most probably work exclusively with conductors who understands that, and your success and your comfort vocally is their success. So your tempo for Audio de Calibresse, you know, is there is no point doing it too fast or too slow or not giving you that breathing thing. It could happen that a conductor doesn't really feel that or doesn't have the technical ability to do that, and then a singer like you has the experience to just make things move when they need to move or pull the brakes.
Yeah, I think about, there's been one time really, I just couldn't sing Au Blanc de Cérès in 2. To me, it's an aria that's in 6. And I just, all of a sudden it became like you say, a Baroque aria. And when that happened, you know, the performance of the aria suffered so badly that, you know, do you hear that? Do you hear how uncomfortable I am as a singer?
Right. So there are a few very few cases where, yes, it's a matter of all of a sudden it's a different text you're talking about. You know, Nature Immense, for instance, in Damnation, you have sung Damnation, I'm sure. Yeah. Berlioz is absolutely specific that it needs to be in 6 and it needs subdivided. And this, which is very difficult because I really think that's the way he conceived the aria, and you hear it in the orchestration. But then it could be that the vocally, it's just vaguely, you know, miscast, or you have to move and move and move and move, and so that could be a point of, you know, different direction. And my point of view there, if I have a tenor that cannot sing in that slow, I'm going to change the music, because I cannot change the tenor, but I can change the music. And I'm going to try to make it, you know, as close or as interesting as possible to that. But there are actually very, very few situations like this musically. Generally, there is a spectrum and there is a needle and you can move it. Right. And I have absolutely no problem doing this. Are you teaching at all?
No.
Have you, I mean, you've done master classes or you have worked with colleagues?
No, I've done one master class in my life in 20 years. And
that's not good.
I think I would love to do all that eventually, but right now I'm just so focused on singing. And, you know, right after we finished the Pearl Fishers in Santa Fe, you know, I took almost 18 months off and I started training with Brian Jade's teacher, Michael Paul. And he's the one that really led me towards where I'm going now. And I think all of the time that I have is spent on focusing on what I'm doing technically and this new repertoire. And I'm so inspired. I never thought I was going to sing any of this. And, you know, it's almost as if everything sort of came together at the right time in my life, technically, just in terms of where my voice was aging and such and maturing, that I'm so inspired. And it's almost as if this music, which I never thought I was going to sing, has given me new life, almost like a new career, like a second, you know, life on my career.
Right.
The teachings and, you know, and I'm just not somebody, you know, I'm middle 40s. I didn't grow up with social media and all of that stuff, the master classes and the tweeting and the Facebook. It's just not, that's not my thing, because it's really, if I'm going to teach, I'm going to teach, and it's going to be about the student and not about me. Showing
off with pictures online. Are you, I mean, first I want to say your Pearl Fishers were extraordinary, and I cannot hear the big aria in Pearl Fishers without having your voice in mind. And there was a poetry and a sound associated to this, and a beautiful situation of Santa Fe that is for me always associated to this. So, and I didn't know you took a break of 18 months after this, but for me it was a resounding success, and I never had any doubt.
I canceled a lot. I kept the Met Troyen and a couple other things, but because I really, you know, Richard Croft was the tenor that came up to me and said, you know, you're going to have to make a decision. You've got like a young Helden tenor voice, a lyric tenor, and this voix mixte.
At what time did he tell you that? Did he? during those pearl fishes?
Yeah. And I say, because, you know, mid 30s, I would say, all of a sudden, you know, it's like my voice dropped a minor third on the bottom, you know, and all of a sudden I could sing baritone arias and, you know, in the bathroom just for fun. And I just had these three different things that I was trying to balance. And I knew if I was going to be successful, I had to,
choose, yeah.
I also didn't really study after, when I was in the med program. I didn't have a teacher that was really there. You know, it just always kind of worked, and I could sing these things. But when it didn't work anymore, well, it's not like it didn't work, but it wasn't cohesive any longer. And I didn't have
Actualized, yeah.
I just didn't have a clear technical idea of what I was doing. I mean, I did at the beginning when I started singing. I worked with a tenor at Luther College at Andrick, but I knew by the time I was mid to late 30s, I needed help.
And you got that help.
I did.
And are you still working with that person?
Michael, yeah.
Michael.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, the people who had at one point to conceptualize and work on their technique, especially if it's after they had a good career and then they feel they need to do it, these are the strongest people. You really all of a sudden you know what you are learning and you know why you are learning it. If you do that at the beginning, you don't know why, but now you know why. And so it is assimilated in a totally different way. And so I think that's part, most probably, of your strengths right now. That's why I was going into the teaching, because you had to figure it out. So as you had to figure it out, now you could probably explain it, but I understand you don't have the time for that. And that's totally fair. Are you singing with your wife?
No, not really. We're not quite there yet where our repertoire.
So what is she singing? What's her rep?
She sings, you know, a lot, all the Mozart heroines. She sings a lot of the Strauss heroines now, like Arabella, Capriccio, Intermezzo, these things, Rosenkavalier. Yeah, so we're, you know, but the wonderful thing about Yuli and I is that, you know, I can't fly over to New York all the time to see Michael, and he isn't in Europe. And, you know, we work together a lot. I'll say, you know, sweetheart, can you come listen to this phrase? What do you think? And it's just, it's, you know, I know some singers could never do it, but for me, it's been a real godsend to have her ears at times.
Right. I mean, it is beautiful to have two artists in a couple, but two singers. But this can be, I mean, we all know couples for which it has not worked, you know, and it's been actually brutal. And yes, this might be the best person to advise you, but at the same time, there is, like in any couple, this kind of competition that can go in, and it can be pretty brutal. How do your kids understand what you do? Are they saying, my parents are doctors because they don't want to say you're singers, or they're very proud of what you do?
I think they love it. I think they're really proud of it. I think, you know, they see, you know, Yulia was just on TV the other night doing Beethoven 9 with Barenboim in Berlin. And I think the kids are really, they love it. I mean, there's music. Henry studies piano and guitar, and Fiona plays the piano. There's music in the house all the time. They're singing. And, you know, how can you not when you have two singing parents?
Right. Well, no, you could say, I really don't want to be like them. You know, I mean, this is the other option. You know, they're never home or whatever. You know, it's all about the voice, and they don't want to talk. I mean, you can see. Do you wish for them to be musicians?
You know, I think when you have children, all you want is for them to be happy and authentic and do what they love to do. It doesn't really matter to me what they do, as long as they're happy.
Right. And do you want them to feel American too? I mean, how do you leave for them this divide of culture?
I mean, Henry is for sure my American, and Fiona's my Deutsches Mädchen. It's amazing. Henry loves American culture, and Mexican food and baseball and the whole thing. He just
Uh-huh.
loved it. He misses being there terribly.
Uh-huh.
And you know, with my friends and my parents, it's you know, it's sometimes a sacrifice, and it's difficult. We try to not go longer than 2 years being home. This year with COVID and having Santa Fe canceled was tough for us. We weren't able to get over. So, but you know, the kids are totally bilingual. I only speak English with them. Yulia only speaks German, and you know, they have that bit of culture from me, and you know, it's going to be lopsided. It's going to be 70-30.
Sure. How did you leave all the, not only the difficulty of COVID, but all the social unrest in the US, and being, you know, understanding the European culture and the American culture? In Europe, some of this has not been totally understood or processed the same way.
Yeah.
How did you feel? How did you process all of this, and also as a family?
You know, it's difficult because we saw, you know, what's happening in America. And I think my children didn't understand why people weren't wearing masks, why there was just this chaos. Whereas the Germans were very, you know, they're very, when you tell them what to do, that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why things progressed in the way that they did in Germany. And there's only, you know, 9,500 deaths or something. And I think trying to explain to them, the kids had the hardest time, I think, trying to process what this means for them. Obviously, at the beginning, it was, you know, they can't go to school, they can't touch their friends' hands on the street. We had to have our kids quarantined for months and being homeschooled, and it was a really, really difficult time. And I think Yulia and I tried to keep on a face that was positive, but also being authentic. And this is the situation that we have right now in the world. And we didn't try to make it, you know, Disneyland for the kids. We tried to stay realistic about what we're living through right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, especially Henry, was very concerned for friends and people in the United States, late May, early June, when the cases were skyrocketing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The way they were.
Right. And the question of Black Lives Matter and all of this, how was that processed by you and your family in general?
I mean, I like to think of, if you took away driving as fast as you want on the Autobahn for Germans, they would lose their minds. Just as if you try to take guns away from Americans, for some reason, they just can't conceive of that. It's just a part of their culture. Mm. But what we don't have in Germany is we don't have people living next to you being clear and obvious racists and bigots. If someone was calling, you know, someone a Jewish pig or something next, they would be taken out of their home and reprimanded, and it just isn't allowed in Germany. And I think this clear and blatant bigotry and in the United States is something that is so difficult to watch. It's hard not to become emotional about it, because you realize it is the one fundamental aspect in our culture as Americans that needs to be repaired. It needs to be discussed. It needs to be open. And if it isn't, we're going to be an empire that collapses, you know?
Right. Yeah, I mean, these are very strong words. And as I have talked a lot with your colleagues, I mean, my political opinions, like right or left, Republican, Democrat, especially as I'm a guest in this country or as the music director of an opera company, they don't matter. And actually, right, really do not matter.
Right.
But there are things that an opera company is there to defend. And the importance of the human condition in a community is part of the fundamental message of art and of an opera company. And so if we can open those discussions, I think we should. And I am very optimistic with the US in the sense that there is in many cities that fundamental belief in the value of the arts and of some fundamental human and spiritual values associated to them, mm-hmm. including from people who might be on a very far right of the spectrum. So I think we need to keep the conversation with these people, and we can play a role. And at the same time, we need to invite in the whole different communities. We need to have different type of people on stage, so people of different communities can recognize themselves in the people on stage.
And that's really part of what's happened and transpired in the last 3 or 4 years. That is at the base of the problem, is that the conversation isn't happening, because it's almost impossible to have that now. The two sides are so divided that we're not even able to talk to one another. And in my opinion, it's why I'm wearing this, is that part of the problem is we don't know any longer what's true and what's not true, what is fact and what is not fact.
Right.
And it's going to continue to become even more and more of a problem unless we can figure this out.
It's actually scary up to the point that you're not talking about the same reality.
That's right.
And it becomes something different. Let's get a little lighter.
Right.
You would have the voice of a bass.
Yeah.
What role would you like to learn and sing?
Good enough, I think, probably.
Boris. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to sing Hans sax before I sing Boris.
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, if I were a bass like like John Tomlinson, maybe I'd like to sing Wotan. Wotan's pretty great.
Right. Well, it's held in.
I know it's everything.
Yeah. And the soprano.
Oh goodness! If I were soprano, it's hard to say. The Strauss roles are pretty great.
Right.
They're pretty great.
So that's interesting, because you're going somehow in the same far as your far as a tenor, transposing things. You didn't say Olympia and Pirate of Penzance.
No. I was counting. My old teacher asked me, how many roles have you sung? It's got to be over 50. And this is my 71st role, in 20 seasons. And I think I've sung so many of the bel canto roles, so many of the French roles, that in all of the Mozart roles, that this is the last sort of, Fach that is relatively unknown to me. Right. I think that's why it's so exciting.
And it's probably the one that in the end fits you the best. And so
I think
that is quite remarkable. And it's much better that way than the other way around. Eric, always an immense pleasure talking to you. And I really miss working with you. And so we have to create that opportunity. Be safe in Madrid. The virus has a different status than in Germany, as you know.
Well, at least everyone's got masks on, even on the street here. So that's good to see.
Right. And you start rehearsals tomorrow, so you don't know exactly how they will make things safe. Yeah.
Well, there's a big email about all the rules in the house. So, I mean, and it's great. It makes you feel safe, and it's going to work. So,
did you travel with your family? Are you alone for now? Or?
I'm alone for now.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you then for.
We were together every day for 6 months, so it's okay.
I'm not asking too many questions about that, at least. Eric, great seeing you. Break a leg tomorrow with your rehearsal, and be safe.
All right.
We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.